Hells Angels Motorcycle Club has not been found by a jury in the state of Nevada to be a criminal gang.
Full murder trial of a member of the Hells Angel Motorcycle Club. DA was explaining Hall's movements at the time of the disappearance.
But still plugged into organized crime. In fact, still ordering murders.
Now he's already posted bail following his indictment by a Clark County grand jury in June.
All the defendants in this case that are currently before Your Honor today have been charged with racketeering.
Well, there you have it. Adam Lee Hall found guilty.
The Hells Angels has been deemed by the Clark County grand jury to be a criminal syndicate.
Counts of murder and various other charges. He showed really no emotion.
Tonight, one of Arizona's most notorious and longtime fugitives locked up.
Decades on the run, a Hells Angel gang member is back in U.S. custody.
Number 5, Kadir Padir. Kadir Padir is a former member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club in Germany, known for his involvement in organized crime and his leadership of the gang's Berlin chapter. He was born in 1979 in Turkey and immigrated to Germany as a child. Padir joined the Hells Angels in 2010 and quickly rose through the ranks to become the leader of the gang's Berlin chapter. Under his leadership, the gang became involved in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking, extortion, and money laundering. In 2014, Padir and several other members of the Hells Angels in Berlin were arrested on charges of organized crime, drug trafficking, and slaying. Padir was accused of ordering the slaying of a rival gang leader in 2013. During the trial, Padir and his co-defendants maintained their innocence, claiming that they were victims of a politically motivated conspiracy. However, in 2019, Padir and 7 other members of the Hells Angels were found guilty of the charges and were sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Number 4. Richard DeVries. Richard Smilin Rick DeVries was a former member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club in Michigan, known for his involvement in organized crime and his leadership of the gang's Grand Rapids chapter. He was born on February 28, 1952, and became involved with the Hells Angels in the 1970s, ending up as one of the most ruthless members of all time. DeVries quickly rose through the ranks of the Hells Angels and became the leader of the gang's Grand Rapids chapter. Under his leadership, the gang became involved in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking, extortion, and money laundering.
Biggest chapter president of the Hells Angels, Richard DeVries, was taken into custody yesterday. Now he's already posted bail following his indictment by a Clark County grand jury in June. Police say the shooting was allegedly between rival outlaw motorcycle gangs, the Hells Angels and Vagos. This was in connection to the shooting on the US 95 in Henderson.
DeVries was known for his violent tactics and his willingness to use force to maintain the Hells Angels' control over their territory. He was also a skilled negotiator and was able to use his influence to forge alliances with other criminal organizations. In 1984, DeVries was arrested on charges of drug trafficking and money laundering. He was eventually found guilty of the charges and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. While in prison, DeVries continued to be involved in the Hells Angels activities and was suspected of ordering the slayings of several individuals.
8th District Judicial Court, Tiara Jones ordered DeVries to be held on $250,000 bail.
The Hells Angels has been deemed by the Clark County grand jury to be a criminal syndicate. All the defendants in this case that are currently before Your Honor today have been charged with racketeering.
Bail hearing is now set for this Thursday.
Hells Angels Motorcycle Club has not been found by a jury in the state of Nevada to be a criminal gang.
In 1997, DeVries was released from prison on parole, but his freedom was short-lived. He was arrested again in 1998 on charges of conspiracy to commit slaying and drug trafficking. He was eventually found guilty of the charges and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 3. Maurice Boucher. Maurice Mom Boucher is a former member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club in Canada, known for his involvement in organized crime and his leadership of the Hells Angels in Quebec. He was born on June 21, 1953 in Quebec, Canada. Boucher joined the Hells Angels in the early 1980s and quickly rose through the ranks to become the leader of the gang's Montreal chapter. Under his leadership, the Hells Angels became one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Quebec, involved in drug trafficking, extortion, and other illegal activities. Boucher was known for his ruthless tactics and his willingness to use violence to achieve his goals.
She led the Nomads, an elite chapter of the Hells Angels. He got the nickname Mom because he was apparently like an overbearing mother. He seemed untouchable. He wasn't. Boucher was the head of an elite chapter of the Hells Angels.
He was also a skilled negotiator and was able to use his influence to broker deals with other criminal organizations. In 1994, Boucher was arrested on charges of slaying, drug trafficking, and conspiracy. He was accused of ordering the slayings of several individuals, including 2 prison guards and a rival gang leader. Boucher was eventually found guilty of the charges and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. While in prison, Voucher continued to be involved in the Hells Angels activities and was suspected of ordering the slayings of several more individuals. He was eventually transferred to a maximum security prison in British Columbia, where he remains incarcerated. Voucher's reign as the leader of the Hells Angels in Quebec was marked by violence and bloodshed, and his story serves as a reminder of the dangers associated with organized crime. His tactics and influence on the Hells Angels in Quebec have had a lasting impact on the criminal underworld in Canada.
Boucher was put on trial for ordering the murder of 2 prison guards, but when Boucher was arrested, he was already a household name. The goal was to destabilize the justice system. First round, the jury in Boucher's original trial found him not guilty. Laughing wouldn't last, but still plugged into organized crime, in fact still ordering murders.
And his story has been the subject of several true crime books and documentaries. Number 2. Adam Lee Hall. Adam Lee Hall was a member of the Berkshire County, Massachusetts chapter of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. He was born on September 8, 1970 and became involved with the Hells Angels in the early 2000s. Hall was known for his involvement in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking, extortion, and violent crimes. He was also known to be a particularly brutal enforcer for the gang, and his reputation for violence earned him the nickname Animal. In 2010, Hall was arrested along with 2 other Hells Angels members, David Chaloux and Keith Veovis, for the slaying of 3 men who had been reported missing in 2011. The victims, David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell, were reportedly destroyed as a part of a dispute over a stolen Hells Angels vest.
Killing of the 3 victims, Hall interrupted and cursed at the DA, claiming he was nowhere near the murder trial of a member of the Hells Angel Motorcycle Club. Morning, while the DA was explaining Hall's movements at the time of the disappearance.
On Sunday afternoon, to meet with you, 20 miles away, at a barbecue.
Hall was convicted in 2014 for the slaying. 3 Pittsfield men prosecutors said were slain so they couldn't testify against him. A Hampton Superior Court jury found Adam Lee Hall guilty of 3 counts of slaying and other charges, including kidnapping and intimidating a witness. Hall, 36 years old at the time of the trial of Peru, Mass, and 2 other men were charged with fatally shooting David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell in August 2011, and disposing of their bodies in Beckett. Hall was the first to face trial. I'm just glad this is over. It's been a long 2 years, Carol Chadwell Smith, Robert Chadwell's sister, said. Prosecutors say Hall had previously assaulted Glasser and wanted him gone so he couldn't testify. They say Frampton and Chadwell were destroyed because they were there with Glasser and would have been witnesses. Hall's defense lawyer, Alan Black, said there was no physical evidence linking Hall to the slayings. He did not immediately comment after the verdict. 2 of Hall's co-defendants testified he masterminded the slayings.
Now, Hall and 2 other men are charged with killing David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell in Pittsfield in August of 2011.
In the Adam Lee Hall trial has come back into the courtroom. Adam Lee Hall is 36 years old. He is a member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. He's 19 charges, including multiple counts of murder for the murders of 3 men in Pittsfield.
Another man charged as an accessory said he helped dispose of the bodies because he was afraid of Hall. They were being tried separately later on. The case garnered national attention, and Hall and his co-defendants were ultimately found guilty of slaying and other charges in 2014. Hall was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
1-139 Cal 18, charging the defendant with intimidation of a witness or other person.
Well, there you have it. Adam Lee Hall found guilty counts of murder and various other charges. He showed really no emotion. Adam Lee Hall now guilty of murder, triple murder in Pittsfield in 2011.
Which Chaloux and Veovis were sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences each. Number 1. Paul Merle Eischeid. Paul Merle Eischeid is a former member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, known for his involvement in criminal activities and his fugitive status from the law. He is among the most dangerous Hells Angel members ever to be known. Eischeid was born on September 26, 1960 in Arizona and joined the Hells Angels in the late 1990s. Eischeid was a member of the Hells Angels Cave Creek, Arizona chapter where he was involved in various criminal activities, including drug trafficking, extortion, and violent crimes. He was known to be a particularly brutal enforcer for the gang, and his reputation for violence earned him the nickname The Dog. In 2001, Eischeid was indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit slaying, racketeering, and other crimes as part of a large-scale federal investigation into the Hells Angels.
For the gruesome murder of a local woman.
U.S. Marshals extradited Paul Eischeid back to the U.S.
2 decades on the run, a Hells Angel gang member is back in U.S. custody.
He was accused of participating in the slayings of Cynthia Garcia, a Phoenix woman who was mistaken for a rival gang member and fatally shot in 2001. Eischeid fled to Mexico, where he remained a fugitive for several years. In 2008, He was added to the FBI's most wanted list, and a reward of $100,000 was offered for information leading to his arrest. Eichscheid was eventually arrested in August 2011 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, after a joint operation by the FBI, Interpol, and Argentine authorities.
For this one, the long arm of the law reaching a very long way. Tonight, one of Arizona's most notorious and longtime fugitives locked up.
Brutal murder of a Mesa mother of 6 2 years earlier. Mike Wadka is showing us tonight how U.S. Marshals were able to track him down.
4-year-old woman, a mother of 6, named Cynthia Garcia. Eichscheid, a one-time Valley stockbroker, Hell's Angel, an accused cold-blooded killer.
And this guy hopefully will get out of jail, at least for a long time, for what he did, not only to the community, but to this poor family.
Eichscheid was extradited to the United States in 2013 to face charges related to his alleged involvement in the slaying of Cynthia Garcia. He was arrested in the gruesome slaying of Garcia outside a Hell's Angels hangout in Mesa. Court records allege that Eichscheid and a fellow Hell's Angel, Kevin Agostiniak, became involved in an argument with Garcia after she criticized the criminal activities at one of their clubhouses. Eichscheid and another member punched Garcia in the face, and when she fell to the ground, stomped on her head until she lost consciousness. They then dragged her, limp but still alive, to a car and threw her into the trunk. The men drove to a remote part of the Mesa Desert, court documents, and knifed Garcia in the head, neck, and torso until she passed. Garcia's body was found several days later with more than 30 puncture wounds and marks on her spinal cord indicating the bikers also tried to cut off her head. However, the case was eventually dismissed in 2014 due to issues with witness credibility and a lack of physical evidence. Despite the dismissal of his case, Eichscheid remains a notorious figure in the Hells Angels history, known for his violent reputation and his years on the run from law enforcement. He's been the subject of several true crime documentaries and books, including The Last Chicago Boss, My Life with the Chicago Outlaws Motorcycle Club by Peter James. That's all for today, folks. See you next time.